Yo, partnership alert, partnership alert, partnership alert. Living Corporate has a partnership with LinkedIn Learning, an American massive open online course provider that provides video courses taught by industry experts across a wide array of subjects. Now, the partnership is because Living Corporate has courses on LinkedIn Learning focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion for leaders, career professionals, and anyone really looking to upskill themselves and be better allies. So make sure you check out our courses on LinkedIn Learning by clicking the link in the show notes. And let's just say you don't want to do that. When you go to LinkedIn Learning on LinkedIn, search Living Corporate. We'll be right there. All right? Peace.
Of the Access Point on Thursday, brought to you by Living Corporate. Living Corporate is a digital media network consultancy focused on workplace equity and inclusion. Living Corporate centers and amplifies Black and Brown voices in the workplace through digital media production and B2B consulting. The network offers a variety of programming, and tonight we are excited that you joined us for our latest installment of The Access Point. The Access Point on Thursday night, this iteration of the show will focus more closely on real challenges that you, our viewers, are facing as you move through the early stages of your career. So we welcome your stories, experiences, and questions, and we look forward to equipping you with strategies to mitigate these challenges. Here's a disclaimer for you. The thoughts and views expressed in tonight's discussions do not reflect the views of any organization the host may be affiliated with. So now let's move into introductions. Deborah?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Deborah Hunter Johnson, and what I do is help you accelerate your wisdom curve. I tell you what you need to know now to achieve your goals faster and more fully.
All right. And then I'll go next, and then we'll have Dr. Morris go ahead. So I am Dr. Wendy M. Edmonds. I am an author and a consultant and a professor at Bowie State University, the oldest Black university in the state of Maryland. So what do I do? Your job is your treasure. I help you separate the gems from the counterfeits. Dr. Martin?
So happy to be joining you here tonight, ladies. As you know, I am not at home. I am dialing in from not space this time, but somewhere that is on the ground, another place, much warmer climate. And I am Lonnie Morris, a management consultant and professor. I spend most of my time helping people at very critical points in their career unpack organizational challenges and design strategies to mitigate against those. There are two things that are very important for me: helping you hate your job less and helping to make work a better place.
All right.
All good things.
Yeah.
So let's get started this evening.
So tonight we're reflecting on what the first part of this season has been like. And so all the work that we've done so far to bring you great content and great discussions and really dig deep, or to look back at those dig deep discussions and what really helped us make some critical moments, some aha moments for each other, and maybe even some of the challenges that we had in kind of bringing this stuff to you, even our own thoughts. There were lots of great moments for me, and I'm so honored to be able to share this platform with the two of you. I learn so much from you each week, from your wisdom, from your guidance, from your experience. And it helps take me out of my own comfort zone. Right? I think sometimes, particularly as you grow in your career, we get settled in the things that we know and we understand. And so I appreciate the times that we get to talk about your perspective and how you might address things. And they're often different than how I might approach it. But I learned so much from hearing your strategies and your interpretation of the types of issues that we addressed. I think when we look back at just last week's episode, that's when we were talking about playing nice in the corporate sandbox and really discussing the fears that older generations have about the new generation, so Gen Z, and them entering the workplace. There were so many cool things we talked about, right? That there's some change management issues to think about. There's a lack of change leadership. Fellowship is really important, and needing ways to to rethink and relearn how we think about the workplace. I think some of the things that got us to that episode were probably most telling, right? So we saw a series of articles come out in multiple publications in the last week or so saying, hey, people are afraid of the new folks who are entering the workplace, which is pretty scary and I think so unfair, right? Pretty scary to say we're afraid of people coming and really unfair. But we also identified that the reason that there's this angst about Gen Z is because they are disruptors. They're behavioral disruptors. They're organizational disruptors. They're coming up in a time where you can have what you want. You can say what you want. And so their expectations of the workplace and how to work are very different. And they have no problem sharing that, right? And we talked about people saying, hey, if you're the CEO and you're a great team player, it's okay for me as a Gen Z person to assign you work on our team. If that's how you present here. It's okay for me to tell you that I expect when I finish my work at 2:00, I should be able to go home. I got other things I want to do rather than sit here with all of you. It's okay that we get a chance to discuss new norms, to create new norms, and to socialize those with the rest of the organization. I know, Deborah, you missed that chat with us. Do you have any thoughts about this fright that people are expressing about Gen Z coming to the workplace?
It feels like the variation of a theme, Lonnie, that I've heard before. Because, well, first of all, I'm going to back up for a second because I have mixed feelings about giving a group of people who were born in a time period a label because it generally does harm. Yeah. And I don't know, I think it started back with baby boomers. Somebody got the great idea to give them a name, and then every generation after that has had one. And then they decided we're going to go even back in time and give the folks before pre-baby boomers a name. We're going to call them veterans. And so what you have are these labels that have stereotypes associated with them. And then that causes the first problem right there. Because instead of someone getting to know a person as an individual and authentically, oh, you're a Gen Z. I know all about you. You're a Gen Y. Oh, you're a baby boomer. So you're those people sucking up all the resources. So what happens is you have these negative stereotypes associated with generations that create divides. And I feel it unnecessarily. So I wish we could just strip all those away. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are getting paid to classify these groups and create a cottage industry around navigating them, when I think we create a problem, because then if you deviate from that stereotype or that norm that has been described, then you're an outlier. And I know change is hard, because we have a whole change management industry now to help people manage through change. And this is another aspect of change. You have new people coming into the workforce. Everybody has to scoot over a little bit, share the seat. You know how you're at church and the pastor says, scoot over, you need to let some more people in your pew. And you're thinking, it already feels real tight and cozy. And
tell your neighbor, scoot to the side.
Right, exactly. And then there's always that person that wants to come late and wants you to scoot so they can sit on the end in the catbird seat. And you're like, I got to church really early to be able to sit on the aisle and stick my leg out and stretch. You don't want to give it up. Same thing in the workplace. That causes people to have to move over, to have to share. They communicate differently. Technology has driven some divides. But at its heart, it's change. And that's what makes it difficult for people. You know, they know the playbook, they have the script, and now new people come in and they disrupt it. So it's really a form of otherism. And, you know, we recognize that with race and gender, But what's happening is we're treating this next generation as other. And often other means less.
Yeah.
And I think if we understand that, we understand the toxicity that's associated with classifying a whole universe of people one way and then deciding that they're different and we don't like them because this is how they are and we've never even spoken to them. So what I hope is we can get to a place where we recognize, look, we all have a common ground here. We have some commonalities. First of all, we work at the same employer. We want this employer to be successful so we can get paid, cash, money, perks, benefits, get our vacation, live our lives. So let's all roll together in that direction and be respectful to each other. Because at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to be seen in the workplace for who they are. They want to be heard, have their voice heard. And if we could go back to some of those basic principles, which always seem so hard to do in corporations because of the power structures in place, that would help with that transition. But there's always new people coming in the workplace. That is one thing that will never, ever change. There's always going to be somebody new, and we've got to figure out a way to make it feel less threatening to people.
I love that because it really taps into things we discussed last week about prioritizing psychological safety, right? Wendy, that was and you started with that saying when we label generations, we label groups. That is a form of harm, right? We talked about organizational socialization. So people think differently about work. They have different expectations. And how do we prepare the entire organization to let somebody else sit on this row with us, right? To sit on this pew with us rather than isolating them as you are this different that we already understand. I'm going to tell you a funny story. Just happened to me in the last 7 days. I ran into someone who I had not had any encounters with in about 15 years. And we're sort of catching up and talking. And the person reminded me of something I did 15 years ago that they didn't like. I'm like, and that's still a problem for you right now?
Oh my God.
Like, right. So you're the same thing you're mentioning, right, Deborah? So we identify you as this from this point in time, and then we always see you through that prism, right? So you haven't had any interaction with me in 15 years, know nothing about how I changed, how I've grown, how I'm different, how I communicate, what I've learned, what I've accomplished, but you still see that person from 15 years ago. The other thing we talked about with this was about group and team charters, that is important when you've got, as you mentioned, when there's change happening in the organization, new people coming into the space, that you get a chance to talk about what this space looks like, how we all contribute to this, and how we want to navigate, right? What are your pet peeves? What are your values? So that the teams, as they work together, as you mentioned, Deborah, we're all rowing in this boat toward the same goal in the same direction. We have cues on how we want that experience to be. And when people are outside of that, we get a chance to come back together and talk about how to modify behaviors there. It is not an easy thing. Go ahead, Wendy.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I just wanted to mention about what you said, Deborah, about recognizing new people in the work environment, that they come in with a source of power. So that's the part that's painful for all of those who have been here in the workplace, who have this fear of the new generation entering the workforce, that they do walk in wanting to have these discussions that were once taboo. They want to talk about things that other generations never brought to work or whispered, if mentioned. They want to, the generations coming in now, they want to have discussions about racism. They want to know where organizations stand on Black Lives Matter. What are you doing about how does the organization support some of the issues faced with every day in our communities? It's not just happening in a bubble anymore. They are very, very smart when it comes to activism. And they want to know, what are you doing? These discussions make people uncomfortable. And so the power that they bring is to initiate the discussions, to put boundaries and then hold organizations accountable to how they're going to deal with these very issues that we see in the news that companies used to just turn a blind eye to. They can't do that anymore.
That's absolutely right. It does disrupt a lot of systems because, 30 or 40 years ago, there was this notion of seniority, not just with unionized employees, but unspoken rule that if I've been in this organization longer than you, then my voice should have more sway and it should count for more. And when you're first entering an organization, you should be quiet and you should sit and listen. And so when younger generations are coming into the workplace, speaking up and being very frank and direct, they're not asking. That feels disruptive to some people and it feels disrespectful because that was not how they came up through the ranks. So that can create a point of tension there. Now, one thing that I also noticed that's interesting, because Lonnie, I've had experience last couple of weeks. When you say workaholic, people have different viewpoints. I tend to find, a person more of my vintage and above might think, okay, that's a good thing. That's somebody that works hard, is committed. Younger people hear workaholic, and I hate to, generalize, but their reaction is, oh, I don't want to work with them. This is somebody who doesn't know how to relax. This is going to feel painful and hard. This is not that they're not committed, but workaholic means different things to different people today. And for some people, it feels unhealthy. And if they're trying to keep healthy boundaries, which was a topic of discussion a couple of weeks ago, they don't think that workaholic is a part of that. And so they don't aspire to that at all. More mature people are thinking, you're going to lose out because if people think you're actually having fun in life, you're coming in here looking happy and carefree, that's not going to bode well for you.
Yeah. Well, I think we should be against all the aholics anyway, right? And so the workaholic is the same as an alcoholic, any type of aholic.
That's right.
It conjures this idea of addiction, right? That there's something that you can't get enough of and you keep driving. So I'm glad that we are moving away from that as the preface to people who work hard and dedicate their time and move up in their career and move the organization forward. We shouldn't want anyone to feel addicted to that.
Right. Because what we've seen is people who have balance in their lives make better leaders. Because they're actually living a full life and having life experiences. When you're at work all day and night, your world is very narrow. You are not learning the things you need to lead. So it really is critical to have a full life if you really want to have a successful career. Absolutely.
We're hoping that the boundaries that we shared in a previous episode actually does away with the term work-life balance. If boundaries are set and we don't have to have that blurred line to define us, we won't have to ask the question, where do I get the work-life balance? How do I make this work?
Well, as I talked about in that session, though, there are some people who are driven. It all comes from within. They put it upon themselves. And those are actually the least healthy because they don't know how to self-regulate. And so they're driving a lot of that stress and tension that I have to be successful overnight and I have to do everything I see everybody else doing on social media. I have to have a full-time job and a side hustle and, post every day and be in every organization and living my best life every single day to the point I don't sleep. And that just is not sustainable. So my messaging was really to those people, you've got to learn to pump the brakes and put the boundaries around yourself. If you're in it for the long haul, if you want to be a marathoner and not just a sprinter, that, fades out, kind of crashes and burns in a couple of years. If you really want to play the long game, that's what you have to do. So to me, it's very complicated, but I do think, Wendy, to your point, it starts with ecosystem signaling that we reward balance, that we don't penalize balance, because it will help the ones who are driven that way to realize, well, if I'm not scoring any brownie points on this, if it's not getting me farther along, maybe I'll do the thing that does give me that leg up. Let me give this whole balance thing a try, going to bed and actually getting, 6 hours of sleep instead of 3. Let me try it and see if it works.
Maybe we don't shut down the Gen Z that comes in and asks the question, like you mentioned, Lonnie, in the previous episode, that, hey, if I'm finished my work at 12, do I have to stay to 3? As opposed to laughing, discouraging, maybe we should listen. Maybe we should hear what they have to say. Maybe that's time to readdress how we do things on the job. Maybe leadership should not be quick to turn that away, turn that down, see that as privilege, but maybe think that maybe we could do things a different way. And perhaps that's not a bad thing, right? And work that into the culture.
It could definitely cause conversation in the workplace and discourse that helps everybody learn, because educating someone new to the workplace about some of the benefits of being present and being there and connecting with people might help them recognize that, there may be some reason beyond me being on my computer to be here and to participate in the culture. The folks who have been there a while might recognize, just having people sitting around here pretending like they're working, just waiting for yabba dabba do time before they leave. You know that song, the Universal Quitting Time song, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I heard you both loud and clear. So I'm actually working from Nassau, Bahamas this week, and at lunch I had my lunch on the beach, and I took a nap on the beach. So I am a student of my 2 senior scholars and professionals right here. So I listen to everything you say each week and take those notes and incorporate it into my own life.
That's right.
I know we had an episode where we talked about the soft skills and the hard truths. And I know there were some important things there, Wendy. I think that was the one that I missed, right? I was away during that time. You want to catch us up on that?
Yes. So we talked about what soft skills look like and having the soft skills, developing the soft skills, being able to negotiate, communicate. Those are skills that sometimes aren't even appreciated as something that's necessary. Remember, we talked about, Deborah, that's the fluff. It's not always respected to have that developed. And
that used to be the thinking, for sure.
Yeah.
Used to be the thinking.
But we're seeing now that that's different. So I want to, I talked about deception and how soft skills is, how do we come to the workplace and build trust? That's networking. That's having conversations. That's getting to know the people who are around you in the organization. And it isn't always that easy. And as followers in an organization, we have to hold organizations accountable. Are they really being who they say they are? Are they doing what they say they do? Are they living up to their mission? And let's look at I think we took the NFL as an example, whose culture has been toxic for some time. And that toxic culture got them in the news on more than one occasion. And just because that happened, they actually put some measures in place, and it made us really believe that they're making some changes. They were using their listening skills to hear from people, employees, that things needed to change. And they did some things like painting and racism in the end zone, allowing the football players to wear the signage, Black Lives Matter, on their helmet. All of those were signs for us who watch football that, hey, guess what? They are making a change. They are hearing. But in the background, what we knew was that John Gruden, for over a 10-year period, continued to send these emails, right, that were just laced with racism and, they were misogynistic. All of these things were going on, which tarnished their effort. Now, whether it was done deliberately or not, that's something that we have to think about. But when you have the most powerful people in your organization not living up to the mission, and you put the optics out for the people to believe that you're trying to make a change when in fact you're not, it makes it very difficult for us to recognize empathy in an organization.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that. So how do we build trust? So organizations have a responsibility. And then we talked about how do our listeners develop those soft skills. It's not something that we are going to have to think about and maybe we'll use it every day. That needs to be developed. Everything you do. There are certain ways in which we can do that. But before I do that, I want to go back to what Deborah said earlier. You used the term otherism in when we talked about soft skills. And otherism you used in the manner of when we as Black and brown people are the only ones in an organization, or the only African American female, what that otherism looks like, and how our soft skills help us to navigate that process. Emotional intelligence, managing the emotions. Can you share more on that?
Sure. In my experience, because I spent a lot of time in human resources, developing leaders, and also dealing with lawsuits that exposed a lack of soft skills in most cases. The role that I see organizations playing is they have to select leaders well, and they have to develop leaders. Because soft skills come to play in one-on-one interactions. You can have on your website the best mission statement, values, and visions. You can have a CEO who's from the top is saying all the right things. But if the direct manager, the direct supervisor doesn't live those values and has poor soft skills, so that when you have a death in your family, the first question is, when are you coming back to work?
Come on now, I'm about to shout.
Or when your workload is, too much for you to handle, and you're trying to negotiate, and the person just tells you, just get it done. Those types of things can be demoralizing when there's preferential treatment, when there's just a lack of respect that permeates the relationship. Again, you can have the best mission, vision, values, you can have the great CEO, but if that one-on-one contact where the soft skills really come into play aren't being seen by a team, that will cause attrition, that will cause poor morale, that will cause a lack of productivity. And so I view it as a personal accountability thing. If you want to be a leader in today's world, it's imperative. It is a requirement for you to have strong soft skills. I don't even call them soft skills anymore.
Right.
These are core competencies, right, Wendy? That you need to be successful. And so if your natural leaning doesn't take you in that direction, it's probably best that you not seek those roles. Because it is a requirement today. increasingly, if you look at performance evaluations, especially 360 reviews, it factors in those skills. And so anybody that thinks all I need to do is show my revenue, show my bottom line, get them, hit the metrics on productivity. Increasingly, there are other measurements that are in play today. And if you really want to be competitive, you have to model that behavior, and you have to practice it. Mm-hmm. You really have to practice it every day to be good at it. And so my message to people is like, start from day one.
Yes.
Start from day one. And it's not that golden rule anymore. Treat people like you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. You need to treat people how they want to be treated, which requires you to see them and to hear them and to listen and to lean in to what they are saying.
And we can stage our skills. We can stage them by practicing just in volunteering. Volunteering is you learn a whole lot because you play different roles in an organization, but that gives you the opportunity to hone in on your skills, learning how to negotiate. How do you do that? Both with internal customers and external customers.
Mm-hmm. And you know what else, Wendy? I encourage people to do work in the community with nonprofit organizations, because you learn a lot in settings where you are not paid for your labor.
That's right.
Where you still have to bring that energy and bring that strong work ethic, but you're not getting that paycheck associated with it. And that really tests your mettle. It tests, what you're willing to do. And it also tests your ability to be humane and kind and have humility, because some people go into community work feeling exalted. Mm-hmm. I am so great. I am just wonderful.
They need me.
Yes, because look at these poor people. But I have found that work in the community really helps you round out those soft skills, because as a volunteer, you're doing what's asked of you. You can't lead with title. You can't any of that. And that's where I really got great experience that helped me with my leadership skills, doing work in the community and with nonprofits. And I still do it to this day. And I still get the world-class experiences with those organizations.
I would say the same thing here. And it develops your ability to influence other people. Talk about the soft skills is, how do you present yourself, right? How do you deliver your message? It's the tone. It's the choice of words. You can be effective without being absurd. You can be effective without emotion. And how you deliver is going to determine how well it's received. You get practice. That comes with experience over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
This is great. I think we know that soft skills are part of the core competencies that everyone needs right now. We see those showing up in annual surveys of what are the top skills employers are looking for. Multiple organizations run those, and we always see things like teamwork, collaboration, leadership. Those things are necessary, and they rise to the top. They are just as important as the technical skills that we see in organizations. So I'm glad that we had a chance to really explicate that. I'm wondering if the two of you want to share any of your aha moments from the season so far.
Other than the first one where I disappeared in a star.
Maybe another one.
I thought this would be the episode that something like that happened to me, because each of you have had your special moment.
We can make it happen if you want.
I know.
So you don't feel left out. We don't want to other you in any way.
Well, I felt that I was a part of it because I got to laugh. That was really so I felt that I got to be a full participant in the experience.
Absolutely, you did.
Well, aha moments for me, I think, as the season progressed, what I started recognizing in research and what I was reading and seeing is that companies were starting to pay attention to some of this employee feedback. Because, in the fall, there was this real sense that all of these employers were about to drop the hammer and say, you must come back to work 5 days a week, full time. The pandemic is over. And, a few employers came out with that, and there was a visceral negative reaction. And you started seeing companies thinking, maybe we need to pay attention to what our employees are saying. They're telling us flexibility is important right now. And you started seeing employers paying attention and being more flexible. So to me, that was a huge aha moment that employers are recognizing this is a new day. And we don't want to be on Glassdoor with a 2 rating.
Yes.
Because people can talk to each other now. The hunt for talent is real. I was talking to a recruiter today, and it is tough finding talent. And I think that has sobered employers as well to recognize it's not just about the dollars. People want to understand what type of cultures we have, and if we're going to be a good place to work, if we're going to develop them, if they're going to feel welcome. So I think we're starting to see a sea change in the power dynamic. Because you used to have it, even 5 years ago, an employer would interview 10 people for a position, make them come in for multiple days, whole rounds of people, and not communicate with them whether they got the job or not. People would assume, well, I didn't hear back, so I didn't get the job. Now today, employers are facing that. They are saying, we schedule people for interviews, half of them show up.
Yes.
The other half don't show up. And then we'll extend offers. Sometimes we don't even hear from people. Or if we hear from them, they've taken a job someplace else. So they are kind of seeing how disrespectful it must have felt to the person who took time off from work and prepared for the interview and bought a new suit to just not hear back. So I think, we're seeing that the power is shifting a little bit and that companies are responding to that. So that's been my aha moment for the fall. And I'm going to see if it continues and see if it becomes, a practice and a policy as opposed to a moment in time. Lonnie, what about you? What's your aha moment?
So mine's an easy one. It was our discussion about maintaining healthy boundaries in the workplace. And I'll tell you why, because it sounds like that should be an easy one. But I think until we had our conversation, I was not thinking of this sliding scale of people who feel like work stresses me out versus people who feel like work is a driver, right? And that no matter where you are on that spectrum, you still need to have boundaries. And I think that's something I struggled with, particularly in the earlier part of my career. Not at all right now, very much so. But in the earlier part of my career, when I was rising on the career ladder, is figuring out where do I take out this time for me. And so our conversations about how volatile technology is and how that's contributing to this lack of boundaries, and particularly with everyone post-pandemic with work from anywhere and 24-hour access. And when we talked about abuse of power, right? So who is responsible for setting those boundaries, and how do you negotiate that in your workspace with your superiors, with your upline? And I was so appreciative of our discussion about mindfulness in this space and flexibility, and how to have those conversations with your immediate boss, and what does that mean in terms of organizational culture and really self-empowerment. You can really take some control here in setting those boundaries. It doesn't have to just come from someone else. That was a mind blower for me, because it's something I hadn't considered all of the ideas around that.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Wendy, what's your aha moment?
The personal board of directors. Because you always say, yeah, I have a mentor. Mentor relationships can go foul And what's the difference is that you have more than one perspective. You mentioned in that episode, Deborah, that I loved. It was actually a laughter between you and Dr. Morris, and you said you must not have ever been one of my mentees, right? Because it's challenging. It's pushing them beyond where they think they can go. Someone was saying a quote from Nelson Mandela where it says, yes, you have to see your power and move beyond your thought of inadequacy, right?
That's right.
And your personal board of directors does that for you. They're not supposed to keep you comfortable. They're to push you outside of your comfort zone.
Well, at least one person on there has to. You just fill it, because you don't want to fill with everybody that does that, because it'll be exhausting. You do have to have people who are empathetic and uplift you. But Wendy, to your point, that is the person people forget to put on the board of directors.
They don't think of that.
Because they know. That's right.
And we don't have different types of people. To your point, no, we don't have everyone who's going to think different. And sometimes we do that because we protect ourselves. So I love the discussion where we talked about who these people should be and what kind of things that they should do. And then the other part was helping to develop that career plan.
That's right.
Right. Because now we're
writing it down.
Write it down. Make sure that you take advantage of what is a fit for you. And now it is open season. It is open season. And so this was all a discussion on preparing our listeners. And I just really, really thought that was great.
I liked your discussion about the career plan, because people have it in their head, but it just stays conceptual when it's there. You really have to write it down, because that's sort of your vision statement. And then you have to put some objectives, and you have to put some actions item on there, because you're going to chip away at it over time. And then you have to start, because I talked to a lot of people about this. They may, 5 years ago decide that I want a particular job. And I always tell people, you should not focus on the job. You should focus on how you want to feel and what you want to be doing, because the job that may be your dream job may not exist right now. And it may not be on your radar. You don't have a name for it yet. And so you can, create goals that are too small if you aren't expansive in writing them down. And I think a career plan helps you do that.
Yes.
Because you can start saying, now, I said I want this job, but all my actions that are happening organically are taking me in another direction. And that seems to be really where my interests are. And so you won't know that unless you have it in writing, and you can actually hold yourself accountable. So I like that idea. I think that's a really good tip for people to do.
Yes.
Really good tip. So I think between, having the career plan and the board of directors, what would be the one other takeaway for this season that we think we want people when they're, doing their New Year's resolutions, and it's Kwanzaa and they're going through all the principles, Kujichakulia and Karumba, collective responsibility, collective work. They're making sure that they're creating their career plan and creating the board of directors that will support them. What else? What would be one more thing we would want them to focus on?
I got it. And I think this has come out in every episode that we've had, and all the strategies that we talk about really point to this. And we use this language early about being authentic and staying true to yourself, right? Because all the things we're discussing about keeping you accountable and holding you accountable and moving you forward in what feels right and what makes sense to you. All these, the board of directors is about that. It's helping keeping you honest with yourself. The career plan is about helping keep you honest with yourself. Establishing boundaries is about saying, here's what's too much for me, and you being involved in that process. All these things are about helping you distinguish what's important in your career path, how you fit within an organization or multiple organizations, and how do you help co-create that with the people that work with you and the organizations that you get to work with to make sure you're on this path to success. So I think that whole notion of being authentic and staying true to you is how all of these things really come together.
I like that because it ties back to listening to your inner voice and knowing who you are. And that is sort of a spiritual journey, which I think is very important that you do on a regular basis, not just all these actions that are external, but doing the work on the inside and on yourself as well.
That's right.
I think that's good.
There you go.
Well, you know what? Our time today is coming to a close.
That went by fast.
Yes, it went by really fast because we covered a lot of things this season, starting out with navigating the pivot, going all the way through the secret weapon and soft skills and healthy boundaries and playing nice in the corporate sandbox. All of those were hard-hitting topics, value-added topics, topics that are relevant today. So I hope that our listeners picked up some nuggets that will be helpful to them as they move forward in their careers, because that's the goal of the Access Point, and particularly the goal of Thursday night, because we are targeting people who have been out there in the workplace for a few years and they learn some things about themselves and they really want to level up. So it is my hope, and I know it's so I can speak on behalf of the two of you, that is your goal for the Access Point too, to help people level up and be their best selves. And so, I want to do a proverbial toast. We can toast in spirit. We don't have to have libations to toast, but we can toast to our listeners, toast to kicking off the inaugural Thursday night Access Point, and toast each of my wonderful co-hosts who brought heart and spirit and soul into this. And we worked it through over the weeks to this point. Yes. We came on laughing, right? We kicked the season off laughing. So I think it's only fair that we kick it off laughing. And Lonnie, I'm happy that we can see you now. I don't know if you realized you were frozen for a while with probably a look. I'll let you decide how you feel about the look that you were frozen on. But anyway, we want to celebrate the Access Point. Thank everyone for joining us and stay tuned.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a blessed holiday season, and let's get those career plans and board of directors and that internal work done as we go into the new year.